All right, let's jump right into this explainer and decode the 2025 cybersecurity job market. If you've been tracking the industry lately, you already know the landscape is shifting under our feet. Today, we're focusing squarely on the defensive and response roles, the exact spots where employer demand is absolutely exploding right now. We're going to look at the hard data to see exactly what hiring managers are desperately trying to find. Here is our roadmap for the briefing today. We'll kick things off with the massive worker shortage to get the big macroeconomic picture, then pivot over to how entry-level expectations are shifting. After that, we'll do a deep dive into those core defensive roles. And finally, we'll look at what actually drives the salaries up for those positions. Section 1. The worker shortage. To start, we have to look at this staggering number from the recent White House Lightcast report. 265,000. That is the current national talent shortage of skilled cybersecurity workers right now in the U.S. A full decade of intense industry growth just hasn't been enough to close the gap. That is a massive number of empty seats that organizations are practically begging to fill to protect their infrastructure. And honestly, this breakdown perfectly illustrates the pipeline bottleneck we're dealing with. Look at this. Only 7% of workers are hired directly out of an educational program. The vast majority, about 55%, are actually pulled from other IT or cyber roles, and 38% are crossing over from completely non-IT fields. So, what does this actually mean for you? Well, it creates a fascinating, kind of frustrating dynamic. There's actually a 10% surplus of candidates fighting for entry-level jobs, but a massive deficit, literally only a 76% supply rate for experienced roles. Breaking in is the hardest part, but man, once you have a couple of years under your belt, you are in incredibly high demand. Which brings us to Section 2, the shifting entry-level landscape. So, how do you actually break in? Well, with AI and automation taking over a lot of the repetitive tasks, the very definition of entry-level is evolving fast. According to a recent ISC2 study, the divide is pretty stark. Hiring managers now expect entry and junior-level staff to own things like documentation, basic alert management, and backups. Meanwhile, the really complex, critical thinking, stuff like digital forensics, governance, cloud security, and secure software development, that is heavily gatekept for experienced professionals. Because automation is kind of eating the bottom-tier alerts, the modern entry-level worker absolutely has to bring sharp analytical thinking and the ability to operationalize new tools way faster than they used to. Moving right along to Section 3, core defensive and response roles. Let's look at the specific opportunities on the table. These roles form the absolute bedrock of any organization's security posture. First up, the security engineer. Think of them as the architects and the builders. They're the ones physically creating the systems, the firewalls, and the breach detection networks that actually keep the threat actors out. They collaborate heavily with tech managers and analysts to build out that secure environment from the ground up. And the crucial takeaway here is just the sheer volume of demand. CyberSN data tracked over 64,000 job postings for security engineers in a single year. It is by far the most heavily requested role in defense because, at the end of the day, every single organization needs builders. Next up, we have the security analyst. If the engineers are the ones building the walls, the analysts are the active guards standing up in the watchtower. They are continuously monitoring events, tracking anomalies, and responding to live threats using endpoint detection and security monitoring tools. The market for these frontline defenders is also huge. There were over 45,000 open requisitions recently. This role is really where analytical minds thrive because you're constantly interpreting the actual intent behind the alerts that your automated tools are flagging. Then we have the identity and access management, or IAM engineers. These folks are the specialized gatekeepers of the network. Their entire job is to strictly control who gets access to federated identity systems. They ensure everything is totally compliant with audits and privacy laws, all while automating as much of the user access lifecycle as humanly possible. With remote work basically becoming the permanent standard and enterprise networks getting more complex, the demand here is incredibly consistent. We're seeing across 12,000 job postings for IAM specialists. You just cannot secure a modern distributed workforce without airtight identity management. Period. But look, what happens when the walls are inevitably breached? That's when you call the incident responders. These are the digital firefighters. They are highly trained in crisis management, digital forensics, and ransomware recovery. Their immediate goal is to contain the threat, eradicate it from the system, and get the business operations running again as fast as possible. This is a super specialized, high-stakes skill set, logging over 7,600 postings, and it proves one thing.
Having hands-on experience in actual high-stress disaster scenarios is incredibly valuable to employers. It's one thing to watch a dashboard, it is a whole different ballgame to save a company's data in the middle of an active breach.
Now, we absolutely have to talk about the cloud security engineer. These professionals are the ones securing the infrastructure's code, the container workloads, and the SaaS platforms that pretty much all modern apps run on today. They're out there designing and implementing entirely new security strategies that are custom built for cloud environments. Because having distributed assets is now the absolute standard, securing the software supply chain through cloud security maintains a really solid top-tier demand. We're talking over 7,200 job postings. The stakes are simply too high for businesses to skip having cloud-specific security experts on their payroll. So, to summarize this massive window of opportunity, here is the full breakdown of demand across the core defensive and response roles. You can clearly see that towering need for engineers and analysts at the top, but definitely do not overlook the steady need for versatile cybersecurity specialists, which hit over 8,200 postings. Or the foundational cybersecurity administrators, sitting right there with over 4,500 open roles. This table right here, it's basically a treasure map for where the industry is pouring its recruiting budgets.
Finally, Section 4, Salary Drivers. Let's explore what the Triple 10 data reveals about the bottom line. What actually gets you paid more? Well, the highest salaries in cyber are definitively driven by three core things. Number one is technical depth. Roles that require coding, scripting, or cloud-native skills in AWS, Azure, or GCP, they pay significantly more than purely monitoring-focused work. Number two is business impact. When you are protecting direct revenue-generating systems, kind of like what an application security engineer does, that high visibility justifies a higher paycheck. And number three is scarcity. Incident responders, pen testers, and cloud security engineers are genuinely hard to hire. If you have hands-on experience in those scarce specialties, you hold all the cards in salary negotiations.
So with all this data laying out the exact skills, the specific defensive and response roles, and the distinct salary drivers that hiring managers are practically begging for, the only question left is, how are you going to take action to fill that 265,000 person gap? Which of these paths will you target to accelerate your own career? I hope this explainer gave you a really clear roadmap to navigate today's market. Keep learning, keep upskilling, and I will catch you in the next one.